Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. Once again, it's been far too long since I've released any kind of video content despite my wishing to increase the number of videos I release each week. Such is life, I suppose, but one thing that will push me to complete a video is in order to help keep people informed is when games journalists perform in a substandard manner and then as a group attempt to weaponize their audience in order to attack those who call them out for it. This will be a discussion of the GameSpot review of Cyberpunk 2077 written by Kallie Plagge, her own admissions of not properly reviewing the title, the quartering's coverage of that, and of games journalists and their seemingly rabies-induced vitriol over that, as well as my own thoughts on video game reviews and games critique, and how Kallie Plagge did not conduct an adequate review in terms of several game mechanics. But first, the sponsorship, because that's still a thing for at least another month. Yes, that's right, I have a weekly sponsor because YouTube is YouTube, and because everyone, including the sponsor, enjoyed my little jab at Raid Shadow Legends, we'll continue that in an ongoing tradition by introducing you to the poorly photoshopped by me, Ridge Shadow Wallet. Ridge Shadow Wallet is light, sleek, and industrial. The little guy does fit easily in your front pocket, and as many people were asking, I can myself attest to these guys being RFID blocking. A Ridge Shadow Wallet provided me with my own, and I chose the carbon fiber pattern wallet because uniform branding is a thing. There are over 30 colors and styles to choose from, as well as phone cases, a Ridge Shadow knife, and even Ridge Shadow bags. The Ridge Shadow Wallet comes with a lifetime warranty, and the team is so confident in their Shadow Wallets that they will let you test drive it for 45 days. If you don't like it, simply send it back for a full refund. Get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/SidAlpha and use the code SidAlpha. Link is in the description below. Disclaimer: Ridge Shadow Wallet not to be confused with any terrible mobile games. Now, on December 7th, GameSpot released the written review of Cyberpunk 2077, written by Kallie Plagge, along with a pre-recorded interview conducted by Lucy James, in which she discussed the game with the two GameSpot employees responsible for reviewing Cyberpunk 2077, Kallie Plagge and Jake Decker. The next day, on December 8th, the quartering released the video titled Terrible Cyberpunk 2077 Review Busted, She Didn't Even Play the Game, GameSpot is a complete joke, which, let's be honest, the title as well as the thumbnail are a bit clickbaity in nature and don't accurately portray the actual events and information. However, the information contained within was solid. The allegation was made that Kallie Plagge did not investigate several components of Cyberpunk 2077, and before anyone says, well, how could anyone possibly know that?
We question whether this court is abiding by its own trial instructions. Have I your permission to have Commander Data repeat the record?
There'll be no legal trickery.
These will be your own words, Your Honor.
So let's run through the evidence at hand in Kallie Plagge's own words.
And I've done a bunch of side stuff. Yeah, there's so much that I ignored because I was like, why? There's a lot of stuff on the periphery that I was just like, I am never going to use this. Like, I crafted like one thing. There's like a whole crafting interface and like all this crafting stuff. I barely touched it, but it was just like, help the cops catch these criminals. And I was like, what if I don't want to help the cops? And then I would just drive away. That's kind of what I mean by there's stuff I feel like I didn't fully explore, like weapons. I feel like I didn't mess with my weapons at all. There's a bunch of weapon attachments I didn't bother with. I got mantis blades like way later and I used them like once. Right. Quest, and I was like, I have barely touched, like I looked at my inventory and I was like, I don't even know what half of these things are because I've just barely touched it.
So, by her own admission, she barely touched upon side missions, even though within her own review she claims those are the best part of the game, which, alright, barely touched could admittedly mean a lot of things. We know from The Witcher 3 that CD Projekt Red are quite fond of providing a metric ton of side missions within their games, and while I haven't had the opportunity to play the game myself as it's still downloading due to my forgetting to pre-install it, it does sound very much like that is the case here. But in addition to that, Plagge admits to avoiding brawling, which is a mechanic of the game, so she would not be able to critique that component and let her readers know if the melee combat is good, terrible, excellent, or anything of the sort. She also did not properly explore the weapon crafting and upgrading mechanics, avoiding cosmetic customizations, refused to purchase any vehicles within the game, and allowed what appeared to be personal social ideology to prevent herself from engaging with some of the content within the game. Now, in addition, per her written review, she only played a single character class and did not appear to investigate any any of the other classes to gain even a basic familiarity with them, how they differ from each other in terms of game mechanics, or even what their strengths and weaknesses are. Now, as a games critic, I see her review as incomplete. That is further compounded by her own admissions of avoiding mechanics of the game which absolutely should be included in a full critique, even if first impressions critique requires a familiarity of the different game mechanics on offer, something that was not held true in what is supposed to be a full game review. And I point that out because that is the core job of being a games critic, to provide information and impression to the viewer or reader, to help them make a more informed purchasing decision. Oh, it doesn't have to be perfect, far from it, but a critique should be an informed one. And if, by your own admission, you directly and deliberately avoid game mechanics that you could have very easily included, then as a critic, you're not doing your job to an adequate or credible standard. And that was pointed out within the Quarterings video. Of course, as a result of that, video games journalists have begun attacking the Quartering, and some have even directly and deliberately attempted to weaponize their audience in order to remove the offending material that we'll get to in just a moment. However, I would like to point out that so many people caught on to this within the GameSpot video that it currently sits at the time I recorded this at a mere 5.2 thousand likes to over 33,000 dislikes, and they have since disabled comments on the video. Thankfully, some smart individual out there archived the page before GameSpot decided to hide what people were saying, such as this individual who wrote, "Kallie, I didn't craft anything, I didn't do any customizations, I didn't complete any side quests, I didn't complete the main quest, I didn't go in free roam, and I didn't play the game. I don't know what's going on. 7 out of 10. Another person wrote, "Kallie, what if I don't want to help the cops? Kallie, what if I don't want to craft anything? Kallie, what if I don't want to enhance weapons? Kallie, what if I don't want to play the game at all?" One person replied to that comment with, "Well, she is free to play the game as she pleases, but making out a review from those perspectives alone is all wrong. Game offers a ton of stuff to do. If you decline everything, everything will be shallow and there is not much to do." It makes me think about if she is just like that in real life and making all choices in her life in the same way. I think all things to her must be really complicated, as all options bring up another question. I guess she's just lost. Now, it makes me wonder why legacy media critics are so inherently terrible at accepting and understanding critique. As I said, as a result of the Quarterings video, games journalists have been coming out of the woodwork to vilify him and to weaponize their readers to attempt to deplatform him. While it would seem that these quote-unquote journalists could not be bothered to review the video to even see what was said within it, and that is obvious from some of the comments that I've seen, such as Lucy O'Brien, executive editor of features at IGN, who claimed that the Quartering was a horrific, constant liar. Which I've watched all of these videos in their entirety, and the Quartering was responding or commenting on video segments of what Kallie herself verbalized. Here we have Zachary Ryan, director of editorial video at IGN, claiming the video was targeted harassment and also stating that the Quartering should do 30 minutes of homework, exhibiting that he himself did not so much as even bother watching the video before spewing bile and vitriol. Let's hear what the Quartering said within that video in regards to harassment of any kind.
And I want to be clear. Please do not reach out to Kallie Plagge. Please do not interact with her in any way. Please do not dogpile or say mean things. This criticism, please, remains here. Please allow it to remain here. Okay? I don't endorse that. You already know. And when I say that, I mean it. Feel free to roast in my comments, but don't take it out of here, please.
Next, we have Jesse Shadeen, a writer for IGN, claiming the video was targeted harassment, which it very clearly was not, and claimed that the Quartering deserved to be deplatformed. Here we have Alessandro Filari, a writer and editor for GameSpot, directly calling for his followers to report the Quartering's video in order to have it taken down. Jake Decker, also from GameSpot, also calling for his followers to report the Quartering on YouTube. He also stated that Kallie, quote, puts her heart and soul into everything she writes, which, might I remind everyone.
And like, that was like an interesting character. I didn't follow that quest because it was like, it involved like a fight and I didn't want to do brawling. So I was just like, well, that's sure thing. And then I bounced. But like, yeah, there's so much that I ignored because I was like, why? There's a lot of stuff on the periphery that I was just like, I am never going to use this. Like, I crafted like one thing. There's like a whole crafting interface and like all this crafting stuff. I barely touched it, but it was just like, help the cops catch these criminals. And I was like, what if I don't want to help the cops? And then I would just drive away. That's kind of what I mean by there's stuff I feel like I didn't fully explore like weapons. I feel like I didn't mess with my weapons at all. There's a bunch of weapon attachments I didn't bother with. I got mantis blades like way later, and I used them like once.
Right.
Quest, and I was like, I have barely touched. Like I looked at my inventory, and I was like, I don't even know what half of these things are because I've just barely touched it.
Yes, I can really get a great sense of dedication from her. And then here we also have Timur Hussein, managing editor of GameSpot, also calling for people to report the quartering. And this is only a sampling of people calling for the quartering's head over having the temerity to call into question Kallie Plagge's review due to her own statements. And the review of what it covered was passably written, but it was also incomplete. And as such, it does a disservice to the consumer, people wanting information on the game to see if it's a worthwhile purchase or no. But if the reviewer can't be bothered to, at minimum, investigate the game mechanics, even if they don't want to, then the reviewer should not, in my opinion, be reviewing that game. Of course, this is not the first time Kallie has found herself amidst a controversy of her own making. There was the 2014 review she had written at IGN for the game Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, in which the game was deducted points for having too much water. There was also her 2019 GameSpot review for Days Gone, which was widely regarded as being poorly done, not well thought out, and showed that the writer held no real interest in properly critiquing the game. Along with that, she also had released a Twitter post complaining about the Freakers being white, those are the zombies within the game, where the Freakers lacking pigment due to their mutations is a narrative element of the game. This post on the Days Gone subreddit showed that a researcher discusses exactly that, implying that Kallie either did not play the mission or was not paying attention, either one of which should not be a thing if you were providing a full game review. There are a few basic standards that I feel should be a requirement for a games critic. The first is actually liking video games, something that we don't actually see very much of from legacy media games journalists. The second is the ability to properly analyze both game mechanics and game story. Those are basic, foundational elements to being an effective games critic, and without those, you really have no business professionally reviewing games, again, in my opinion. In addition to that, whether it be a first impression critique or a full game review, it is the critic's job to investigate the game's mechanics. Now, with a first impressions critique, that might not be possible if a new mechanic is introduced mid or late game. However, with a full review, it carries with it the understanding that the game has been played through in its entirety. Not necessarily playing all other character classes all the way through, mind you, but at the very least, circling back to at least inspect them, to be able to relate their similarities, their differences, and what different mechanics they provide. Because at the end of the day, you have a duty to your viewers or your readers to provide them with the data they need to make an informed purchasing decision. Kallie Plagge did not do this, and as it appears, she may well have a pattern of not performing her duty to a credible standard. Of course, there will always be people that simply are not good at their job, no matter which profession you're looking at. It's not because she's a woman, it's not because of her religion or her sexuality or any other trait. It's simply due to her either not liking the types of games she was reviewing, or a potential of laziness, or even possibly that she just lacks the required skills for deductive reasoning and critical thinking. But to claim that it is targeted harassment for simply being critical of her work due to her own statements, that is delusional thinking at best. For these games journalists to then attempt to weaponize their fan base in order to attack someone for that wholly imagined offense, it is petulant maliciousness of the highest order. This person was critical of someone within our circle, so now we must destroy his livelihood and his life. It is utterly despicable and only shows to underscore just how idiotic these particular games journalists really are. Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.
May whatever God you believe in have mercy on your soul. This court stands adjourned.